Okay, welcome to the Iowa Great Lakes Fishing Club's second Facebook Live presentation. COVID protocols have been relaxed somewhat, but they're not to the point where we felt comfortable doing another in-person event. So we're going to give this Facebook Live deal another shot. Maybe by fall we'll have a chance to do our in-person stuff, but we had great success on our last try at this, so we're going to do it again. We've been leaning pretty heavily on Mike Hawkins and his staff to help with the live events, and we're going to count on him again tonight. I think you'll find this evening presentation pretty darn enjoyable. Most of us never get a chance to see in person what happens in the gillnetting boats and then in the stripping process in our hatcheries. Got a long list of thank yous for this event. Thank you to Travis Harmon for letting us use Stan's bait to host this event. Travis also helped collect new memberships. And Andy Steffen from No Limits Outdoors to help collect our memberships, as well as the staff from Oak Hills Outdoors. We posted a banner in their offices and they helped us get our new members. Dennis Try from Tri-State Litho. Dennis did our newsletter. He did all the mailings for this event, and we really do appreciate his help. Vanessa Moore from Vertical Marketing for our membership banners. They look great. Northland Men of All Trades, they provided the grand prize for tonight, which is a guided fishing trip for all new members that were purchased. And then Chris Baker from F8 Creative, he did a great job on the video you're about to see. Chris is sort of a new business in town in Spencer, and he's hoping to build his clientele. And we have a really, really big thank you to Heather Leibarger of Heather Feather Designs. Heather and her husband Adam have been working on our club's new webpage, and it's really has turned out well. She's donated her time and her expertise, and we can't thank her enough. If you look at that webpage, you'll see a lot of new stuff. You can do your memberships online. You have online affidavits, director profiles. There'll be a lot more things that'll be added in the future. Example would be the Jim McDonald Scholarship information. So keep your eye peeled to that webpage. It's iowagreatlakesfishingclub.org. Board members Adam Leibarger and Paul Daniels have really been the driving force for this evening's events here and program. So we do thank them. They put in a lot of time and a lot of effort to get this event handled. But really, we owe the biggest thank you to our membership and to all the new members, because we can't do stuff for our communities without your help and your support. The last two membership drives have worked out very well. Our membership is back up to 270 plus, which is where it was before the COVID virus stepped in and kind of shorted things out. So to all of our new members, we hope you enjoy your membership. And thank you to all of you for your support. Now, what do we do with the money that we raise? Well, getting kids interested in fishing and keeping them interested is probably the club's motto or goal. This summer, we'll do at least 4 kids events. First, our usual Kids Fish Day, which has always been on the first Wednesday of May, has been moved to Flag Fest weekend in Spencer, and that will be June 12th. And we'll also do 3 other events up at the lakes, at the Lakeside Lab, but it will be through the Dickinson County Extension. And, you need to register for those Dickinson County events with Hannah Dibble at the Dickinson County Extension Office. All these kids at these events will receive some fishing equipment, food, and we hope they have fun, because we do. Dickinson County has installed a new boat ramp on the south end of Big Spirit. Some of you might think that's a DNR project, but it's actually a county project, and our club has pledged $2,000 to that new boat ramp. Clay County will also be doing a new boat ramp on Lost Island Lake next year, and we have $2,000 earmarked for that project also. We also provided, for Clay County, we did some fish habitat work at Schaumburg Park between Everly and Spencer. We've helped the DNR with several projects, the fish barrier at Lower Gar to keep those darn muskies in the lake and keep the Asian carp out. Of course, right now we don't need a fish barrier because the water's so low, but it's proven somewhat effective. We had the fish cleaning station, the Jim McDonald Fish Cleaning Station in Emerson Bay a couple years ago. That was a big expense. And there's lots of smaller projects that are too numerous to mention. Lakeside Lab, we've also helped them with water quality kits and other studies on to trace the history of the lakes and how the trends are being tracked and what's happening to our lakes over time. And then on a very sad note, your board of directors voted to use some of our funds to support a very special scholarship fund. Conservation Officer Steve Riggard lost his life to COVID this past winter. Many of you knew Steve, most of our board members did. Came in contact with him on the water, in the field. And he was a true professional, a fair man, and he'll be missed greatly. So to honor his memory, the scholarship fund has been established at Iowa Lakes Community College. You can check that out on their scholarship page. Go to their financial aid sector, click on that, and it will give you the name of the lady to contact to contribute. So our club has contributed, and we hope we can convince some of you to help out with Steve's fund too. Okay, now to our main event. Throughout Mike's presentation tonight, you can ask questions on Facebook in the comments section. We're monitoring that here, and we will ask Mike those questions as he's going through his presentation. So here to talk about gill netting and hatchery work is Mike Hawkins.
Thanks, Terry, and thanks to the club for all that you guys do for fishing in Iowa. You're certainly a really important part of the legacy of fishing in Iowa and all the things that, a lot of the good things that happen. So we didn't have an opportunity today or this year to keep the fish hatchery open for the public, and it's even devastating for our staff. We just love having all the kids and a lot of the anglers that love to see those big fish in the hatchery. And so instead of doing that this year, or because we couldn't do that this year, the Great Lakes Fishing Club asked if they could come out and film some of the work that we do. And so that's what we're going to do tonight, is just kind of walk through our process on the water and in the hatchery, and kind of explain some of the things that we're doing out there, and talk a little bit about the fishery as well. This is a great time of the year for our staff. I want to give a lot of credit to the fish culture staff in Iowa. We've got some amazing experts in fish culture, and they really orchestrate everything that goes on in the spring through our hatchery system. And we're really out there collecting fish for our hatcheries, and making sure that we've got enough brood stock and enough eggs to fulfill all the requests that the biologists have across the state. So what you're seeing here on the screen is our boat setting a gill net. And a gill net is really just an entanglement net. It is a net that's designed to just sit there in the water. It's about 320 feet long, the ones we use here in Spirit Lake. And a fish will swim along the shoreline and encounter that and get tangled up in it. And then we check that net about every 2 hours to make sure that we can get those fish out of the net before any harm comes to them, and then we'll sort them out and get them back to the hatchery. So there's Jed Sigworth, technician for our management section in my boat, and getting ready to deploy another net. We just set a net there. Each boat has 3 of these large gill nets in it, and they're set perpendicular to shore out to about 10 foot, 10 to 12 foot of water is where they end up. You can see all the lighting on the boats. The boats are set up to work at night. This is right before sunset, so we're getting ready to encounter those fish. Of course, walleyes are most active during the evening period, right as the sun is going down, and then those few hours afterwards, and then again in the morning. They do feed and do some things other parts of the day, but this is the prime time for them. They're very active during this period. The net has a float line on the top. That rope that's on the top is actually floats, and there's a lead line on the bottom that runs the length of the net. And so the net just sits vertical off the bottom, and it's about 8 feet tall. So after we get those nets set, we actually get back to the shop, and this is a time when we can decompress a little bit, get some supper. The night's going to start for us in a couple hours after we get back. You saw earlier in the video, the nets have to be gone through every day to get material out of the net, sticks, zebra mussels. Unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of zebra mussels, and so we get some of those entanglements. We get the nets cleared for that night. So this is the boat going out for our first net check.
What time is that net check, Mike?
Yeah, it's about, so the nets are set at about 7 o'clock in the evening. We want them in the water about 7, and so we're hitting the water here about 9 p.m. And this run it depends on the number of fish in the net, but typically about an hour to hour and a half of work out on the lake, taking the fish out of the net. So, I want to mention too here that even though you don't see some PFDs on some of our crew, those are actually worn underneath of our rain gear to keep us from getting tangled up in the net. So, and a reminder to everybody that's out this time of the year, that water is really cold. You need to have that protective gear on so that you're making sure that you're safe in the case that you did go in the water. You wouldn't last long at those temperatures. So here's some video of some of the first fish coming in the boat for the night. You can see they're really tangled up. We use just a small hook blade or a carpet blade on a utility knife to cut a few of those filaments. Those holes in the net really don't decrease the efficiency of the net through time. And so we're catching a lot of different species, but mainly this time of year, we're going to be catching walleyes. There's a big white sucker, a species that spawns at the same time as walleyes do in the spring at about that same water temperature. And then we're bringing female walleyes, male walleyes, and we're also bringing muskies back to the hatchery. Earlier in the season, right after the ice goes off, we're working with northern pikes. So the northern pikes spawn, and the hatch is actually completed by about the time we're doing this work. So there's a nice muskie that's going to be brought back to the hatchery. All these fish are brought back into the hatchery, and they're again sorted by sex, and whether that walleye, the female, is ready to give her eggs or not. You can just give a little bit of a press on the abdomen of the fish, and if some eggs appear, she is ready to spawn, and those eggs will be taken first thing in the morning the following morning. If they're what we call green, or their bellies are a little bit hard, we'll hold those fish in the hatchery and wait for those fish to ripen up in the hatchery, and a fairly good percentage today do.
Now, you were also really accurate, as you can tell. This is a female.
Yep.
I think that was a big one that we pulled out.
Yep.
What you were able to tell the difference between males and females. Can you tell us what the differences are and how you were able to recognize them?
Yeah. So really, it's a matter of this time of the year. The females, if they still are holding their eggs, they're going to have a pretty large abdomen. You're going to see that egg mass in their abdomen. The males have a much thinner body. There's a male right there going into the tank, and they're expressing sperm this time of the year. So they're very easy to tell. The times when it gets tough is if you've got a female that spawned maybe a few days prior. Her abdomen starts to firm back up, and you end up taking maybe a second look at her.
And what's the maximum length normally of a male?
So the males typically will get pretty old in the lakes, but they don't get very big. So 22 to 24 inch male would be a really large male walleye.
And how old roughly?
We've seen them up into the low 20s, typically into their late teens. And then the females They're the fish that gets much bigger. We can see them up to 10 pounds or more in the lakes here, and they don't probably live as long. 13 to 14 years old is old for a female. It's mostly because of all of that stress from spawning every year, all that egg production that they go through. Their lifespan just isn't as long. So the night that you were out, Paul, with us, was a great night. We had 171 females that we boated that night, which was a great night. Our target at Spirit Lake for this year was to collect for the hatchery, and this is based on the amount of eggs in each of these females, but our goal was to collect 1,700 female walleyes. And we hit that target, and that's the fish that were carrying those eggs. We actually collected about 1,900 females total this year for Spirit Lake.
And how many males do you need then to service that?
Not nearly as many, but we need a few hundred to do that. We did collect about 800 males during the process this year. And so each walleye, they can, we'll see some video here in the hatchery, but each walleye, female walleye, can produce somewhere around a quart of eggs. And then we kind of count eggs based on quarts volume, and that sets our targets. We know about how many eggs per quart there are. There was a male walleye right there, so pretty easy to see. I think that one really splashed the camera.
There were quite a few that splashed us. What you explained something interesting when it was netting in, because we would see a big female and then a number of smaller fish, which then you said were mostly males.
Yep.
What's going on with that?
So those females, when they're ready to spawn, they come into shore. They are looking for suitable habitat, and that attracts males. Males are up in the shallows waiting for those females to come in. Walleyes are a broadcast spawner, so they'll find suitable habitat and then just broadcast those eggs as the males are kind of rubbing along the side of her. And so as she's expressing eggs, they're expressing semen into the water, and the fertilization technique just occurs there. We can really up the percentage in the hatchery when we do it manually. And so in the wild, as you can imagine, it's kind of hit or miss. There's only a few seconds where that egg is viable after it exits the female's body, and it has to be fertilized. And so we're definitely increasing those percentages and fertilization rates in the hatchery. I would say too that Iowa's walleye program, our walleye fisheries in the state, really are dependent on these fish. Both collected here at Storm Lake and some years at Clear Lake, and then down at Lake Rathbun. These broodstock walleyes supply almost all of our walleye fishing in Iowa, and very little natural reproduction in our lakes. We've documented very little in our lakes, and none in our streams. Some out in the larger rivers like the Missouri and Mississippi rivers. But if you're catching a walleye interior in the interior streams and lakes of Iowa, those are coming from the work here. So,
yeah, I thought that was interesting that you explained that there's been some really good success for walleyes on the Little Sioux here locally, and those are pretty much all out of this program, and you guys are actually putting in walleyes into that system pretty much every year, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. Those are 2-inch walleyes that we're stocking into those river systems. So just something to say about the tank. When these fish come in, the females especially are they're going to be a little bit exhausted from being in the net. We have very little mortality when we go through this netting process. You see some fish laying on the top there, but they're receiving pure oxygen, through the water, through a oxygenation stone. And then we're running fresh flow on them the entire time that we're out there, about 1,000 gallons an hour. We're running into our tanks, and the fish do really great.
What did you say the loss was on average? 1 to 2%?
Yeah, average loss, between 1 and 2% in a year, and so well worth the investment, for the egg production that we get, and some of that loss may be of some older individuals. So we're back at the boat ramp. You can see the hatchery truck here. We pull the boat right up next to the hatchery truck, and they're again running fresh oxygen. They've got salted water on board, which takes some pressure off of the renal system of the fish. They've also got circulating water there to try to take as good of care of these fish as we can. That's the whole purpose of this. But yeah, really good night. That tank is really full of fish. We got a bunch, and in fact, after you guys left that evening, the second run, we had even more fish that
Would you
evening.
do that second run at 2 o'clock in the morning?
So we finish up at about 2 o'clock. That night, I think we got off the water about 2:15 or 2:30 because of all the fish that we had in the net. And so there's a nice fish Paul's holding up. That's probably getting close to 10 pounds there, I would guess, on that walleye. Really nice female fish.
Well, I found it really interesting watching you guys, like even in, it was pretty windy that night. It was really choppy, and the care that you guys took in cutting them out of the nets, which was a task in of itself.
Right.
And then just how quickly you wanted to get back to, to the boat ramp
Right.
to get those fish off, because we had such a good sized tank going, and a lot of appreciation and respect for the fish.
Yep.
And that's your resource. So that was great to see.
Yeah, no, that's good. So we're going to transition from our night work to the following morning. So this would be about 8 o'clock the next morning in the hatchery, and the fish have come in on the truck. They've been sorted out into respective tanks. They've been checked to see if they're ready to flow for eggs, and then they're going to be processed. It's important to know too. A lot of folks ask, what do you do with these fish after they're done? After you're done with them, they go right back to the same lake that we caught them from. Here's Kim, the hatchery manager for the Spirit Lake Fish Hatchery. She's responsible for really orchestrating everything that goes on at Spirit Lake, the gillnetting process, all the crews that come in. Probably about 50 to 60 personnel in fisheries alone are gillnetting all about the same time across the state. At Clear Lake, Storm Lake, Rathbun, up at Big Spirit. Almost our entire fisheries bureau is involved. All hands on deck. Research folks, culture folks, fisheries management folks are all there working on this process. And then this continues 24/7 after the gillnetting is over. So we finished up gillnetting, we hit our targets, but they're still working. Every day they're spawning more fish that are coming right. Next week the muskies will be spawned and the eggs collected from them. And then in the background there, you can see the egg jars that are up on the batteries. They have to be monitored. You want to make sure we don't lose any water supply to those. The filters are always clean. So there's a lot of work that goes into this, even after the gillnetting process is over. So
yeah, when we were at the tank here, there were a lot of, as you can see right now, there were a lot of large muskies. I mean, the width on them was really impressive. Also too, like you said about how busy it was like a factory. I mean, we really had to watch ourselves to not get in the way, because we were talking and she was explaining things, but there was never a stop in movement.
Right.
You can tell there's a big sense of urgency to get that done.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't have the stats on the biggest fish this year. I think you guys were probably handling one of the bigger walleyes that we've had. I know we had some muskies that are up around that 50-inch mark, or maybe even a little more. We don't have any good weights on them yet. As we start to process those fish, they'll start to get some weights on those fish, and
and she was explaining to us that as for aggressive fish as a muskie is, how docile and how easy it was for her to handle most of them was really quite surprising.
Yeah, and those they're almost like big puppy dogs in the hatchery, and yeah, you can handle them. If you tried to do that to a northern pike, I think this is actually the fish you guys handled maybe the night before.
Yep.
That big female walleye. So that's Chris drying the fish off. He's making sure that the water comes off of that fish and there's no water droplets, because that's what activates the egg. So once the egg hits the water, it opens a pore on the egg called the micropyle, and that allows the sperm to enter. And so we dry the fish off, and then what you'll see Scott doing here is just applying gentle pressure to her abdomen, and those are thousands and thousands of eggs coming out of that fish. That walleye will probably produce about a quart to a quart and a half of eggs. That could be, somewhere around 150 to 200,000 eggs that are coming out of that one fish. It's just switching pans there. Again, there's no water introduced at this point. Those eggs need to be dry. That's ovarian fluid that's on the eggs, so that's not water. And you don't want anything to touch those eggs until we have the sperm mixed in with them.
question was, can you gill net the same fish more than one time?
We
You
do,
tag
yeah.
them and monitor them?
Yeah, so we do. We saw a few fish that had already been processed through the hatchery. They had a spine clip because we use that to age the fish, like tree rings. We can actually age these fish to see how old they are and how well they're growing, and then we can see that mark on them when we get maybe a night or two later. That female will be up starting to feed.
And there's, is there any issue with having, you know, probably it doesn't happen in the hatchery, but like when you're taking them back in the tanks, of having a muskie with some walleyes, or are they just too stressed out?
Yeah,
and,
they're definitely not feeding.
spent,
Yeah.
yeah.
In fact, they're doing the opposite of feeding. A lot of times when they bring them into the hatchery, we only have them in for a few days. We don't like to keep them there. And they'll actually regurgitate their last meal. So you'll see some fish, you know, a little freshwater drum or a little bluegill or something that pops out. And so,
where do you get all the water? For
so the hatchery water all comes from Big Spirit Lake. We've got a large intake pipe that goes out north of the Orleans boat ramp. In about 12 feet of water, that goes to a filter pond on the west side of the spillway. And then we have sets of pumps that pump that over to the hatchery. So it's all pretty much raw lake water, very little filtration used there, which is a problem with zebra mussels.
I was going to say, do you have a problem with zebra mussels, or what's, you know, how do you handle that, or how could you handle that?
We do, and we're actually looking at a construction project. Him and the hatchery folks have got a construction project coming up this summer where they're going to be moving the incubation system onto a recirculation system. So a pretty big upgrade to the hatchery. Here we're doing, there's the addition of the water. So the sperm has been mixed in with those eggs and adding in the water. And this is about the 30 seconds or 45 seconds where fertilization occurs. If those eggs aren't fertilized during that period, the pore closes and the egg is not viable anymore. So they make sure just a little bit here. They'll add a little more water, and you see the blue cat fat flasks there. That's semen that's been collected from the male walleyes in the nights previous, so they can actually hold that for a little bit.
There was something mentioned too about clay.
Yeah, so the next process you'll see here, they'll spend a couple minutes now just swirling those eggs, making sure that everything is done, and then you see Wendy taking the eggs over right now to a clay bath, and because naturally the eggs are real sticky, they'll stick to rocks underwater, cobble, and so the eggs are very sticky. This clay bath takes that stickiness away. So it just removes that sticky layer on the eggs. They'll be gently brushed with the clay for just a few minutes there, and then they're put into a hardening tray. And that hardening tray, there you see it right there, just allows the clay to come off, and they'll spend about 4 hours in that hardening tray. And when they start, the eggs are extremely fragile, and just any type of and that's why you see us using fingertips and paintbrushes. But after four hours, the eggs are hardened and they swell. They actually gain in volume, and they become pretty tough. So you can now handle them a lot better. And that's when they're put up into the incubation jars, and they're gently rolled there for about 18 to 20 days, and they'll start to hatch off in about that period. And that's when we start to stock fish. Some quick stats for everybody. This year in Iowa, well, I told you we netted about 1,900 female walleyes up on Big Spirit and East Okoboji. Did a little netting over on West Okoboji as well. Storm Lake had another 1,000, over 1,000 females that were netted. 3,716 females that were harvested, brought into the hatchery this year. That's going to produce about 260 million eggs is what we've got incubating now in the state. And we hoped from those 260, our target is to have about 141 million walleye fry hatch off and available for stocking. Some of those fish are held back and raised. We do about 300,000 fall fingerlings that are in that 7 to 8 inch range. For stocking and augmenting some of our fry stockings. And then another probably about 400,000 2-inch walleyes. Again, about 500,000 northern pike fry that we do. and about 2,600 muskies that we raise, and we're raising those a lot bigger, up to about 12 inches, which is why the numbers are.
And you said the northerns only go to certain lakes, and it's a small percentage.
Yeah, so the walleye, northern, most of the fish we raise in Iowa, our management biologists like myself that manage those resources are requesting those fish to augment natural populations out there. And so northern pike, we put a bunch of northern pike this spring into Diamond Lake and Little Swan Lake. Those are two renovated natural lakes. Hopefully that's the only stocking we have to do, because as those lakes become healthy, then natural reproduction kicks in and northern pike can self-sustain. But those initial stockings to get them going is usually where we're using those northern pike. We do augment some populations from time to time, but that's based on the situation.
But I think it's pretty evident, or at least it is for me, going out and watching the process at night, watching in the morning, some of the different challenges that you have as club members, or just folks in general and fishing folks. What's some of the best ways maybe that we can support what you do to maintain the fisheries and really the great fisheries we have around this area?
Well, I think the club does a great job. You're great advocates for the resource, great advocates for the sport of fishing and the work that gets done out there. I think the most important thing for people to realize is those fishing licenses that you buy. This is where that money goes. This is what we do with your fishing license dollars. There's other things, but this is a big one. This is a big, definitely a big part of what we do is the hatchery operation, raising these fish, especially the walleye program in Iowa. So it's definitely important to realize that your fishing dollars go that direction, and that's all they can be used for in Iowa. That's a constitutionally protected fund that those fishing and hunting licenses go into. So
are there certain groups that someone should reach out, as far as legislative people, governmental people, any other ways that we can help support the efforts that you have there?
Well, I mean the club does a nice job of making sure that natural resources and our lakes stay at the forefront. We know, last year was a great example of how important those natural resources are to people. We saw record numbers of people out. We had record license sales for fishing. I know the bait and tackle stores and manufacturers couldn't keep up with some of the equipment. Kayak sales, boat sales were all up. Everybody flocked to the natural resources for something to do when they couldn't do anything else. And so I think it's really important for everybody to know how important these resources are. And I think it's good. It's a good reminder that we've got to keep them healthy to be able to support that.
Well, we appreciate everything you do, and I think that as of right now, it looks like that's all the questions as far as the gill netting and that sort of thing. So I think Terry wants to say a couple words here quick. And
so Mike just touched on it last year with COVID. Just think of how many people got exposed to the outdoors that may not have before. So when you think of it, that outdoor experience, our DNR personnel were pretty well overworked, but I think they did a great job keeping things going. From the parks people to law enforcement to the biology and the hatchery staff, they all made a positive impact last year, and I don't think we can say thank you enough. A couple other thank yous a little bit here. District Supervisor Greg Harston and his conservation officers have been great help to our club. They come and do water safety stuff for us. They speak at our seminars, and they really do a nice job for everybody involved. Kim Hawkins and her staff at the hatchery. Look at the long hours they work, 2 o'clock in the morning, back up at 6, ready to go again. That's a direct correlation to your fishing experience with their stocking program. And then we got Mike. We really relied on Mike and his staff the last few years, a long time actually. He does all of our fall DNR nights, our seminars, and Jonathan Meerbink. We just can't say thank you enough. So to show our appreciation, we did a little plaque here for you.
Oh, wow.
Can't give you a monetary gift, And it says, presented to Mike Hawkins and staff at the Spirit Lake Hatchery. Appreciation for the years of support with club activities and for sharing their time and expertise. Thank you from the Iowa Great Lakes Fishing Club. So we do thank you,
Yeah,
Mike.
thank you. That's awesome. Beautiful. Thank you, guys.
Hold that out to the camera, see.
Sure.
Perfect.
Good job.
Appreciate that. Well, it'll have a nice place in the hatchery up there.
Hope you do.
Yep.
So, okay, so the last part of the evening here, we have the raffles. Mike, you're standing here, you can draw the names out for me. So this is the grand raffle. This is for new members only, for all the people that just registered during this last membership drive. The raffle prize will be a guided fishing trip. From the Northland Men of All Trades. These prizes can all be picked up at the Northwest Bank. You can see Dean Jacobson or Paul Daniels. They'll have the prizes. In Spencer. So Brad Graham from, I think, Lake Park, Brad. So you can pick that up in Spencer. So now we have the raffle for all the paid members, which is Cabela's Guideware rain suit. With the full set, pants and jacket. It's about a $400 value. You got that raffle? Go ahead, Mike.
I feel responsible
You
for
do.
somebody not getting it.
So John Doley just won the rain suit. Now while Dean's reloading, I got a few upcoming events we need to talk about here. Walleye Weekend is May 1st and 2nd. Any club member, you have to be a paid club member, turns in an affidavit for the biggest fish, gets a rod and reel combo from the club. And your affidavits that you use for that can be found on our website, which is iowagreatlakesfishingclub.org. Wings and Wetlands, we partner with the Clay County Conservation Group on May 7th at Scharenberg Park in Everly. They're going to have a Wings and Wetlands program. I think there's at least 3 sessions, maybe 4, depending on how many people register. You have to register with Bree Blum at the Clay County Conservation. And our club will provide a meal for everyone there. Another event would be Roadside Cleanup on May 12th. There's a 2-mile stretch from south of Fostoria that the club picks up. We meet at the bank in Fostoria at 5 o'clock, and we'll have pizza and refreshments after we're done. Club Rendezvous is June 5th. That's just an informal club fishing tournament. And then Kids Fish Day, which was usually May, first Wednesday in May, has been moved, like I said before, to June 12th. It'll be at Stolly's in Spencer in conjunction with Flag Fest. Be a 7:30 a.m. 7:30 to 8 o'clock registration. Then for 2 hours, the kids will go through various DNR stations and fish cleaning, stuff like that, and then a small fishing tournament with prizes given out later. You ready, Dean?
Ready.
Okay.
Are we drawn for
This is for the hoodie.
Mike, you want to stand there to draw?
Cabela's Guideware hoodie. Kyle Norris from Spencer. Okay. Now we've got the St. Croix rod and reel. It's about probably a $200 combo, $190 combo. Dana G. Next item is a Cabela's Guideware parka. Tom Howe from Spencer. This is a float tube from No Limits Outdoors.
Cutthroat.
Cutthroat float tube. Scott Hansen.
Last one.
What do we got here? This is a rod and reel combo from No Limits and Spencer. Daniel Johnson. And we have one more. We didn't bring that along tonight, but we have a set of club clothing, fishing club clothing. Marshall Lang won that one. It happens to be a close relative of the guy that just brought the bucket over. So I think that pretty well concludes our evening. I might mention one thing quick. Talked about Steve Riggard Scholarship, but our club does have our own Jim McDonald Scholarship. And deadline for that is passed this year, but just an update on that. We had 7 applicants this year, which is a pretty high number for us. So we're looking forward to screening those, and you'll hear who those winners are here shortly after our next board meeting. So with that, Paul, anything else?
Continue to follow the Facebook page for additional events, updates. Like Terry said, there's a lot of stuff going on here this summer and throughout the year. And if you guys someone wants to get involved or support us in another way, we'll always take equipment. If you have unused equipment that you have extra, we are always in need of equipment with all the events that we have, or sponsorships of any sort. Any help we'll take.
Sponsorship for Kids Fish Day is $100. That's pretty easy for a lot of people, and we have a lot of business that contribute for that. So thank you for watching. We'll see what this fall brings. Maybe we'll be in person. Maybe we'll be doing another Facebook Live. But again, thanks to our membership for supporting our club. Have a good evening.